To Big Bollywood Buffs. So good to see you again. The last time I had interviewed you was just before the release of Gehraiyaan. That was such a great interview. We had such an overwhelming response from all your fans and our followers on Instagram. So it's really nice to see you here again.
Yeah, nice to be here. Good to talk. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you on your song, which released about 2 weeks ago, Do Ki Now, right?
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
I've been listening to that. And initially, I must say, it's a kind of song that grows on you because initially, when I heard it, I thought it was a bit sad. But then I kind of understood that, it's that kind of song that when you go through heartbreak, you probably listen to it, and then maybe afterwards it makes you feel a bit better. So, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what was the actual intent of the song, like for the listeners and the audience? Because obviously, it is quite different to your previous work.
Yeah. So firstly, I'm a sucker for sad songs. So I do like a good sad song.
Yeah.
Um, but this song started with that kind of vocal sample, the other voice, which is not Anumita's voice, it's
Mhm.
the other female voice. And I found this sample that I had on my hard drive, and I was like, okay, what can I do with it? And at that point, I was sort of experimenting with um, you know, old cassette players, and when you hear them, they have this really like wobbly, detuned, lo-fi kind of sound. And
Yeah.
so I was really into that. I'm still really into that. And like, how do you make things sound old?
Hmm.
So, and I think even in Gehraiyaan, we tried like I was getting into that and I was exploring those things. But in this one, it was really something at the forefront of what I was thinking of. So I was like,
Yeah.
it'd be interesting if I'm this voice that kind of reminds me of something old and nostalgic. If I put this on this kind of production,
Yeah.
what would happen? And I released this small clip like 3 years back on
Hmm.
Instagram, and there was a small video, and it did really well on Instagram, and everybody's like, give us the full version, give us the full
Yeah.
version. But I never really, made it.
Hmm.
And then finally, like, I got some time recently to get back into independent music. It's my first independent song in a while, so I was like, let me
Yeah.
start with that one. And then I collaborated with Anumita and Kausar, and we made the song.
That's great because obviously for our listeners who will be watching this later when I post it on my page, I mean it's important for them to know the story behind the song. Like so it's basically two lovers who have to separate due to unforeseen circumstances, right? And then
Yeah, it could be that. Could
yeah,
be that.
that's what I felt. And then when I watched the video clip, and then initially, like, I don't speak Bengali, but I think I got what like the girl was saying in the video that she was kind of asking the guy that do you still love me?
Yeah,
And it was yeah, it was a bit like, okay, like expressing your emotions through that song at that
yeah.
point of time in the relationship.
Hmm.
So I think not everybody will grasp that, but people who do watch it and not just listen to the audio will probably see that. So कहीं ना कहीं मुझे पूछना था आपसे कि क्या ये जो लव स्टोरी है इस गाने की has it been inspired by any personal incidents in your life या फिर कहीं और से इंस्पिरेशन मिल गया आपको?
Well, I'm sure like everybody else, I've had my share of
Yeah.
you know, not I don't want to say heartbreaks, but challenges in relationships and things like in the past. This one, it wasn't really something that I thought of consciously, to
Mhm.
be honest. But I feel like this sense of melancholy and sadness is something that somehow finds its way into my music. I don't know why, but I
Somehow.
guess somewhere I'm a sad person.
Yeah, because the other song which you made with Savera as well, which has become quite popular, in that song we kind of notice as well that in the description it says, put on your dancing shoes and forget about your heartbreak kind of thing. So
Hmm.
that was something that I thought is probably like the common factor in your songs, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Even in Gehraiyaan, I think the way it started was the song Gehraiyaan itself is a sad song, and
Yeah,
we
yeah.
made it independently. So again, even like an upbeat song that we make or like a fun party song, I think when you add this slight sense of melancholy or bittersweetness, maybe that's a better word, it
Yeah.
adds more depth to it, I feel.
In fact, that's what I noticed, that even though there is a sad element in your songs, like you've just said in Gehraiyaan,
Mm.
but they have really like struck a chord with the audiences, especially Gehraiyaan title song. I mean, I know
Mm.
the original was in English, right? And it was also sang by Lotika,
Ritika.
right?
Yeah.
And then when the Hindi version came out, I think because of the film and because it would picturized upon Deepika and Siddhant, I think obviously that gives like a whole new vibe to the song.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
and then, it's almost as if the audience is actually feeling those lyrics, and you're trying to convey a message perhaps, or it's just that you liked the lyrics. I mean, because I've also read somewhere, or in one of your interviews, I think you mentioned that you always write your lyrics in English first, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Now we're slowly changing that as Savera and I get uh, more and more fluent at writing lyrics in Hindi.
Hindi, yeah,
Uh, but in the case of Gehraiyaan, we had Ankur Tiwari who wrote that
yeah.
particular song, and he didn't like translate what we had written in English. He basically wrote something new which worked with what was happening in the film.
Hmm.
Uh, and like the mood of the film more than like a specific thing. So I think
Yeah.
that's how that song, the lyrics were written.
It came about. Yeah,
Yeah.
but going back to Gehraiyaan, I think that's definitely one of the highlights of your career so far. And I'm sure in future you'll be able to collaborate with a lot more movie makers and, express what you kind of feel, the kind of music that you want to portray out there to kind of narrow that gap between indie and commercial, right? Is that right? Like, is that what you're trying to do, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not technically allowed to mention what, but
Yeah.
in the next few months, there are like three movies that we worked on
Oh,
that's
wow.
gonna songs of those movies that are gonna come out in the next like this year, and then a couple of them in the next year, in the beginning of next year. So after Gehraiyaan, sort of like there was this gap where like the song happened, it was a hit, people loved it, and then it took a while for people to kind of realize what had happened and like
Yeah.
who were the people behind the music and all of that.
Yeah.
And then we started getting interesting projects which we worked on this whole last year, and we haven't released too much music after that. And usually when one has a big hit like that, you
Yeah.
want to like deliver
Back to
more
back.
music fast. But
Yeah.
we were so busy working on these new films
Mhm.
that now finally these songs are going to come out, so excited for people to hear the new songs as well.
Definitely. And I think, I mean, people sometimes just have to wait for good music to come out. I mean, of course, there is a lot of, like there are loads of songs that are coming out, but nowadays I think it's mostly just remixing old songs. And there are rarely any good remixes that you think, oh, they've actually done such a great job. Like recently with What Jhumka, I think that's probably one of the best remixes that I've heard in a long time, which is again a Dharma movie.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like I see the same lyrics, the same tune, and literally nothing has been changed, and they've just taken the same song and kind of like someone else is singing it. So I guess
Yeah.
that's not really ideal for our listeners and just like the
Yeah,
audiences.
it's not ideal for our listeners, and I feel it's not ideal for the creators as well. Because
Yeah,
what's the fun in sort of beyond the point? It's not fun.
yeah,
Like,
definitely.
and if it's not fun, then you're not going to really make something new and interesting.
Yeah. But going back to Gehraiyaan, I mean, I just wanted to ask you, how did you back that film? I mean, did you approach Dharma or did Dharma approach you? Because that was such a massive like project, right? And it did so well. I mean, I'm from Spain, from the Canary Islands, although I live in London. But because like, especially in the summer, whenever we go on a boat party, the first song that they play is like Dube, and
Really?
everyone is just posting that on Instagram with the reels and everything. So it's gone viral. So I think even when I
Yeah.
interviewed Latika at the time, I had told her that you listen, this song is going to be such a big hit. Like I can already see it.
No, it definitely. I mean, it's changed our lives, all of our lives. Savera,
Yeah.
Lotika, me. It's really made a big difference. But the way that film happened was, um, Savera and I were doing a lot of independent work and we were actually making music for advertisements.
Okay.
That's what we did for many, many years in Bombay, in Mumbai. And I got a message in my DMs one day from on Instagram saying that, hey, I'm Shakun Batra and
Oh, wow.
would you like to meet? Like I'm looking for some music for the film.
Yeah.
So and he's like, would you like to meet? I was like, yeah, of course. I'd already seen his I'd seen his previous work and I'd loved it. And I'd at that point when I'd seen his film like Kapoor and Sons when it came
Yes.
out in the theater, I was like, one day I'd love to have the
And that
opportunity
was
to work
such an
with someone
amazing
like this.
film. I love that film actually.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film, and I was like, man, I would love to be a part of like make music for this film. And
Yeah.
then he messages, and then I'm like, yeah. So he called us on board to do the background score first, and we were working on the score, and Savera and I are like, who's doing the songs? Because we wanted to do the songs. We wanted to see if we had the opportunity to do the song.
Yeah.
So he's like, there are other composers, bigger composers working on it. And but if you guys want to give it a shot, and if you think you have time between your score work, then give it a shot. So we did, and the first song got approved. Then second song got approved, and then they're like, "Why don't you do all the songs?" We're like, "Yes,
Actually, one of my favorites is Bekabu. I love that song. And
yeah,
initially, like afterwards, I kind of like got the lyrics because basically they're trying to say jo banda matlab ya bandi kabu mein nahi hai, right? Someone who's like out of control and it happens in love, right? That's the kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
vibe of the song. And I think initially that song was a bit underrated, but when the film released, it just went as viral as Dube or Gehraiyaan title song. So
yeah,
that's one of my favorites, actually. And I wanted to speak to you a bit about performing live. Like you've also performed live recently with Savera, right? And how does it feel when you're performing with a band? Because obviously, jab aap log studio mein ho, you can correct your mistakes, so you can keep working on things. You can be these perfectionist guys, like who are really into what you're doing. But I myself have attended so many concerts, and sometimes even with a big orchestra, like there are mistakes, and it's more about how you cover it up. Like myself, I'm being an RJ, like I'm live on air, and sometimes you make a mistake, and it's more about how you cover it up, and people sometimes don't even realize. But the one who's part of the team or who knows like how things work and operate will probably notice. So have you had any like kind of incidents while performing live where maybe something has gone wrong and you think, well, this is so different than being in the studio?
you know, your what you just said makes it resonate so deeply with me because
Yeah,
uh, like you want to be a perfectionist, and I have this tendency, and so does Savera.
yeah,
Uh, we're really like perfectionists about small things, which maybe doesn't make a big difference in the grand scheme of things, but that's how we operate. And it's about having control over what people are going to finally hear. But
yeah.
when you're playing live, you really have very less control because there's so many things. It's happening there and then. So many things can go wrong.
Really.
You can't control how it's going to sound exactly. You can try your best. So it's actually an exercise of learning to let go
Yeah,
playing live. And in the studio, it's like micro managing everything and making sure everything is like one decibel here and there. And live is just letting go and learning to have fun. And I think the energy on stage translates more
yeah.
than the exact things. But we not played much so far. This now we're going to start playing more. But our first show was at a big festival in Pune. It's called Supersonic,
Yeah, I
and
saw that. Yeah,
there were like some 5,000, 6,000 people there. And it was our first show. We never played these songs before live. So we
yeah.
were like really stressed. And we were playing, and I have my guitar and I have my synthesizer that I'm playing. And suddenly in the middle of the song, I hear this spark, something explode somewhere. And I'm looking at in the middle of the solo, the sound goes away. And everybody's still like dancing and partying. And
Vibing
I'm like,
now.
yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, this has stopped playing. Luckily, another band member covered up and did something there, and we
Yeah.
just pretended like nothing happened and we played on. But like there was an explosion that happened and things
Oh,
stopped working.
so it was quite evident. It's not like the kind of thing where sometimes the audience doesn't notice. I
I
mean,
don't think the audience noticed. I asked people in the audience and they're like, it sounded fine.